Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Catholic Citizen. We are live here on the show. There's going to be technical difficulties, folks, because I'm calling in from home, doing this show from my beautiful home here. This is my living room behind me and everything. For a lot of extenuating circumstances, we had to stay right here at home and not come down to the studio. So I hope you'll bear with those technical difficulties, bear with you the small little mistakes that we're going to make, because trust me, the devil was even after the show this morning as I was trying to print out things, and I'm not in my comfort zone. What are you going to say? But hey, we're going to have a great time here on today's show because there's a lot of important things to talk about. I want to talk about Dr. Anthony Fauci. I want to talk about a brave archbishop out there in California who's starting to speak the truth, and praise God, it's about time that we have our bishops standing up and speaking some truth, speaking truth to power, especially in today's culture. And then lastly, I mentioned about the National Day of Prayer and just how important the National Day of Prayer is, and looking at President Biden's National Day of Prayer declaration. So all that in just a minute. First, we're going to play the little promo video that we do in the beginning and everything like that. Who knows if it'll work? I'll do my best, but stick around. We'll be back. Hey friends, welcome back for this special edition of the Catholic Citizen, where I'm speaking to you live today from my home. For extenuating circumstances, needed to be in my home today. Couldn't be in the studios, but I hope you enjoy the show nonetheless. It's not going to be as an amazing production as we normally have, but it's still going to be good. You might be able to even hear my kids crying during the show. So it's going to be fun. We'll have some fun here doing the show together. But with that being said, I want to just make sure that we pay our bills, but not just pay our bills, but support this great venture that we have here at AWAKEN Catholic. So first and foremost, I want to let you, or just invite you to follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, all the great social media sites, so you can stay up to date on kind of what's going on. Secondly, we need your help financially to keep this show going. So please support us at awakencatholic.org/donate. Also, I want just to invite you to our AWAKEN apps. We have a great community that's growing, 500 people, in fact, that are a part of the AWAKEN app. And so it's a great place where you can be among friends, among Catholic people who are seeking the Lord Jesus Christ. Lastly, it doesn't matter if we're in studio or we're here at home, we are supporting Casa Bea Cleaning. You can see that my house is a mess. It's very dirty because we haven't had Casa Bea cleaning over. So we need to have Casa Bea cleaning. And if I can just convince my wife to have Casa Bea cleaning over, we will have Casa Bea cleaning. But you too, you can invite it over Casa Bea cleaning today by going to the website, casabeacleaninginfo.com. Have these wonderful people over to support and clean your home or your residence or your place of work. They do a great job, and we love Casa Bea. The Hollow app, I'm just going to put it up there too, because we have a great partnership with them and we want you to know about the Hollow app. Now, the neat thing about me doing this at home is that you can go ahead and, make some comments, and I'm going to do my best to try to follow the comments here on the show. No guarantees that I'll be able to follow this and everything like that. But Nick, thanks so much for helping me set up the show from my house. You think it's awesome. I think it's like crazy. But that's okay. What are you going to do like that? Oh, and Nick says it's more than 500 people that are on the AWAKEN app now. So please join that growing community. I'm sorry, Nick, that I make that mistake. All right. Nonetheless, so please keep the comments coming as you're watching this show. And let's just kind of get down to it, okay? This week's episode of the Catholic Citizen from the Range household. Folks, you can't beat this. I mean, this is live. This is breaking. Let's get down to it. All right. First and foremost, a correction to last week's show. So Vice President Kamala Harris has not been to the border despite being named the immigration czar by President Biden 45 days ago. So there is a crisis on the border. We have thousands upon thousands of unaccompanied minors coming across the border without their moms, their dads, their uncles, their aunts, friends. It's just kids literally coming across the border in facilities where they're meant to hold 33 people there on the border. They're holding hundreds of people, 500 people in these small little facilities there on the border. So it's a crisis. And if there's a crisis, folks, You know, President Bush, for example, during the Katrina crisis in New Orleans, flew over the city. He didn't go down and see for his own eyes what was happening. He was criticized, and rightly so. When there's a crisis, our national leaders need to be there. And so Vice President Harris has not been there. So that part of the story, all completely true. Here's where I messed up. There's a story that said that her books were being handed out to these migrant children on the border. Now, that's not true. There was only one of her books that was being handed out. That book was donated. So there's no proof that the administration was trying to make a profit by selling her books there at the border. I apologize for that. We want to be 100% accurate here on the show, and that was a mistake. But I stand by the fact that she needs to be there, and she hasn't been there yet. So it's very frustrating. All right, on to this week's news. I've been reporting a lot on the abortion industry's connection with our government, including the fact that the National Institute of Health is once again buying aborted baby children body parts from our abortuaries. And it's just so incredibly frustrating on so many different levels when it comes to this particular issue. But let me circle back to that in just a minute. Dr. Anthony Fauci just spoke at a summit called the Future of Healthcare, Bold Bets in Health. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci, again, he's the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institute of Health. Now, why is this a big deal? Well, he's speaking at an event, and you know who it's sponsored by? It's got one sponsor, sole sponsor. Planned Parenthood is a sponsor of the Future of Healthcare, Bold Bets in Health. And Dr. Anthony Fauci and his National Institute of Health is speaking at this particular conference. The same National Institute of Health, which is profiting from the abortions that Planned Parenthood is necessarily doing. So this is the same Planned Parenthood, right, that their facilities alone count for 41% of all U.S. abortions. Over the last decade, they've aborted 3.3 million children. They've received nearly $6 billion in U.S. taxpayer dollars. All the while in the last decade, you know, when they're talking about their for health and so on and so forth, their Pap tests have dropped 67%. Their cancer screenings have dropped 67%. Pap tests declined nearly 70%. And manual breast exams at Planned Parenthood have fallen 68% in the last decade as well. That Planned Parenthood sponsored an event where Dr. Anthony Fauci and other leaders are talking about bold bets in health for years to come. Here's a bold bet. If you kill human life, you don't have a chance at improving human health. Just to be clear, again, this is Dr. Anthony Fauci's Institute of Health, which has given $400,000 to support a grisly experiment that involved scalping second trimester aborted babies and then implanting their skin onto rodents. This is what our National Institute of Health is doing. So it was broke last week out of the University of Pittsburgh. You can see the website in my notes after the show here is done. But why else does this upset me? Well, it upsets me because Dr. Anthony Fauci attended Regis High School in New York. That's a Jesuit private academy. Then he attended a Jesuit school, the College of the Holy Cross, graduating in 1962. So this man who supports taking human hair from aborted children, fetuses, and implanting them on mice, working at the National Institute of Health, no qualms with speaking at an event sponsored by Planned Parenthood. Look, I don't want to harp on the man. I know he's taken a lot of beating from left and right for a lot of different reasons concerning the vaccines and the COVID response and all those things. I'm not going to get into that. However, I do find it hard to trust a particular gentleman or a man, Catholic educated, but yet is supportive of Planned Parenthood, supportive of these grisly practices that the National Institute of Health is undertaking, taking, again, aborted human hair from children that have been aborted and planting them on mice from the National Institute of Health. This is why the second story is just so darn refreshing. But I'm going to get to that in just a moment because we got a lot of comments and I want to see what these comments are saying. People are actually responding. They're actually watching this show. This is fantastic. All right, let me pull up Alina's question here or comment. Hey, brother, my question for you. How should we approach this whole mask-wearing business? I want to be charitable to people who really worry about getting sick, but I also can't stand being controlled by our government. I find myself wanting to rebel. Should I start a rebellion? All right. John Mark says, Comrade Alina, you should. John Mark has joined the Soviet party, I guess. That's okay. John Mark also says, yo, Pete, happy Easter. Appreciate that. John Mark, you're fantastic. Appreciate you watching the show. Thanks for coming on Say Yes to Life yesterday. John Mark is a fantastic man, incredibly smart, intelligent, someone you should get to know. Pete PC says, I get vaccinated and then make a stand again. I say get vaccinated and then make a stand against masks. Okay, so let me just let me tackle the mask debate here just for a second. I have resisted on my own private Facebook page jumping in any way, shape, or form to the mask debate because it just gets all convoluted with a million different things. And so let me just say a few things about how I feel about masks. And I'm sure maybe people are watching like, oh my gosh, I'm really never going to watch his show ever again. When the COVID-19 breakout first came out, we didn't know what was going on. The best science told us, put on a mask. Our health leaders said, put on a mask, and that was going to prevent the spread. And so we did that. We followed what we knew was the best advice at the time, which was good. And that's what we should do. We should try to follow our health experts. Now, here's the issue. As the virus continued, we learned more about the virus. We learned different things about how it was transmitted. We learned different things. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but I mean, there was people, you know, just freaking out. They wouldn't even go outside their house. They wouldn't even have things delivered to their house. If something was delivered, they would leave it outside for 3 days. Then they'd go outside with Lysol and they would just wipe it all down because we didn't know. Was it going to stay on surfaces? Was it not going to stay on surfaces? So there's been a lot of studies on the efficacy of masks since this beginning, okay? So you've had the New England Journal of Medicine come out with its own study. You had the National Institute of Health. There's actually a study on the National Institute of Health right now that says, in fact, and these are researchers from Stanford, that masks aren't actually, in the end, ultimately effective at preventing this virus. And it might be having detrimental effects on our psychological health and even our physical health, because we're not meant to be breathing that CO2 in, okay? Now, there are some studies out there that say, yeah, masks are still effective. So you take all these studies that say different things, and you have to balance them, and then you have to kind of use a little bit of common sense. So here's a question, common sense for you. If someone flatulates in your house, I know this is a crude example, but if there's a fart, can you smell that fart through your mask? Yes or no? If you can, okay? And those little particles, right? The virus is much smaller than those little particles. If you can smell that, guess what that means? It means the virus is probably going to be getting through that mask and also going out. Now, it does help and affect if there's a splattering of things. Okay, it's going to contain some of that. But now they're saying, you know, you got to wear 2 masks. 2 masks are better than 1. So the science has even changed on that and what they're telling us. So the reality is ultimately, I think, and what I've studied and what I look at when it comes to research, is that the mask is not ultimately going to be effective in preventing the transmission of the virus. Look, some of the largest or the cities with the strictest mask mandates have the highest rates of infection. So there's other factors I'm sure that play into that. Absolutely 100%. But here's what I decided to do on masks. I want to be respectful of other people, but I also want to make a bold statement because, you know, again, I go into a school and I see a kid, I see these kindergartners all with masks on, these small little kids. I see the videos of kids like crying because they can't breathe with the mask on. I've even kind of hyperventilated because I put the mask on and I just can't breathe, right? And so it's not helping us, right? So I would say that we need to be respectful of others, but when I go into a place of business, I don't wear a mask. If the place of business says, hey, we need you to put a mask on, I'll put it on. I'll be respectful of that because I know the health department is watching them and so on and so forth. I go to church. I don't wear a mask. You know, a church is a place where I've come to worship the Lord. And again, I don't think the efficacy of the mask point to us thinking that these are actually going to prevent transmission. So that's my own personal belief and thought. Love to hear what you think in the comments. Yeah, that's just what I think. Now, also with the vaccine, you know, because Pete mentioned the vaccine a little bit. we talked a little bit about the vaccine on the show, so I don't want to rehash too much of that, but only to say this. They're telling individuals after you get the vaccine that you still might have to wear the mask. So the vaccine might be helpful, and I think it might even be a misnomer to call it a vaccine. It's different than a normal vaccine. However, with that being said, the shot that you receive does not necessarily keep you from carrying the virus. It might keep your symptoms less, but you can still carry the virus. So that's not really a solution in my mind to anything other than keeping you from getting the symptoms worse than what you could get them. So that's not a solution to the pandemic. So lastly, yeah, Lena, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for the question. That's a difficult question, but what I would ultimately say is this: be bold, make a statement, and be respectful. You can do all of that. And I think we've decided to, in my family, not to wear the mask because I think it's a sign of submission as well. I mean, this is unrelated, but there are cultures, right, in our society that they mandate that certain individuals, certain genders in their culture wear something to cover their face. And what that symbolizes to a certain degree is submission. And I think when we cover up the image and likeness of God on our face, there's also something very spiritual taking place when we do that here. I mean, think about, just for 1 second, watch this. I'm smiling. And I bet you just maybe smile just a little bit too. Because when you smile, that has an effect on somebody else, right? I mean, this is a way, 90% of communication is not even talking. It's the way that we look. It's the way that we talk. It's the way that we move our hands. It's the way that our face appears. And so it's a way that we connect as human beings, and covering of our faces from a spiritual perspective. We're not able to connect with one another. Think about what the mask of social media does. When your face is covered and people can't see you, you can type whatever you want online. Then you can feel powerful because you're doing that, right? Well, in person, if you're not able to connect on a really deep human level with that mask on, that's going to have a spiritual, a psychological effect beyond just the physical as well, right? That you're breathing in all this carbon dioxide that's supposed to get out of your body. All right. Enough of the mask debate. I'm moving on. All right. Let's continue here with the show. I don't want this show to go forever. All right. Second story. We talked about, first story, the frustration of Catholic educated people supporting abortion, supporting the research on aborted babies at the National Institute of Health, namely Dr. Fauci. But this is why the second story is so refreshing. Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco, forgive me, Archbishop, if I mispronounce your name. I do that a lot here on the show. But he said that Catholic politicians may be denied communion when they persist in supporting the killing of unborn babies and abortion. Thank you. I mean, this is Catholic teaching, and finally we have an archbishop standing up and saying, "Look, this is the truth. This is reality. This is what we're going to teach." The archbishop is doing this. This is published last Saturday. The Bishop Cordileone said that these politicians are causing scandal for the Catholic Church, and denying communion may be the only recourse a pastor has left. He said, quote, "When other avenues are exhausted, the only recourse a pastor has left in the public medicine of temporary exclusion from the Lord's table." He wrote, "This is a bitter medicine, but the gravity of the evil of abortion can sometimes warrant it." Now, he didn't mention any particular politicians, but Nancy Pelosi is a part of his diocese. And then, of course, you have the commission right now that's looking at President Biden being a Catholic and whether or not he should receive communion. So let me emphasize that this is meant to be a medicine. It's meant to draw people back, because when you deny, for example, when I have a child and my child is doing something he should not be doing, sometimes I might take away that particular toy that he's hitting his sister with. I'm thinking of maybe one of my sons. So I take that toy away and I won't give it back to him until he has done a timeout. He understands what he did is wrong, and then he understands that he's not going to do it again. So I know that's a very simple example, but in the same way, sometimes when we deny something from someone, that enables them to stop and think about and realize in their conscience how serious or how grave their action may be. So this plays itself out within the denial of the Most Holy Eucharist. It's the greatest gift you can ever receive. And so maybe that can be a wake-up call to President Biden and say, my God, maybe I shouldn't support the abortion of millions of unborn children every single year. I don't think that's revelatory, but I think that should be done to wake him up, to draw him back home, because I want to be in heaven with President Biden someday. But if the man continues to support policies supporting abortion, folks, this isn't just like, oh, I'm pro-choice and everything. He supports abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. You can't be Catholic and support that, period. Okay? All right. Where was I? Oh, the National Day of Prayer. Speaking of President Biden, let's pick it up. All right. Yesterday was the National Day of Prayer, something that was created in 1952 by a joint resolution of the United States Congress and signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. The National Day of Prayer states on their website, quote, that our task force is a privately funded organization whose purpose is to encourage participation on the National Day of Prayer. It exists to communicate with every individual the need for personal repentance and prayer, to create appropriate materials, and to mobilize the Christian community to intercede for America's leaders and its families. The task force represents a Judeo-Christian expression of national observance based upon our understanding that this country was birthed in prayer and in reverence for the God of the Bible. That's why the National Day of Prayer was created. That's directly from their website. So yesterday, President Biden issued a declaration of the Day of Prayer, talking about, quote, a reckoning on racial justice to the existential threat of climate change. Americans of faith can call upon the power of prayer to provide hope and uplift us for the work ahead. President Biden mentions a connection to the divine, but other than that has absolutely no reference to God. So he picks issues that he is most certainly concerned about: racial injustice, the environment. Awesome, great. Thanks for pointing those particular issues, but never references God in the day of the National Day of Prayer. Who are we praying to? The universe? He mentions the divine from a quote from another individual, a connection to the divine. Well, okay, the divine. All right. Now here, look, I'm not saying that President Trump was an amazing Christian, an amazing example of a Christian. But one thing we learned during the Trump administration, and one thing that I agree with progressives on, particularly with President Trump's tweets and his words or lack of words at different times, was that words matter. And lack of words matter as well. What you say or what you don't say matter. So on the National Day of Prayer, a day that is set aside and has been since 1952 for the Christian community to intercede for America's leaders and its families, to represent a Judeo-Christian expression of the national observance based upon our understanding of this country was birthed in prayer and in reverence for the God of the Bible. President Biden can't even mention God. Not even asking him to say Jesus Christ, which, being a Catholic, I hope he talks about Jesus. I've never heard him talk about Jesus, but I'm sure he has somewhere. But I've never heard it in any one of his public speeches. But he won't even mention God in his particular address. Now, the address is fine. I'm not going to go into it other than the fact that, like, again, President Trump in his first address, prayer breakfast, mentioned God 5 times. Mentioned God 7 times, I think, his next address. His last address on the National Day of Prayer mentioned God 11 times. Again, President Trump, not a model Christian, but he spoke about God. And why is this all so important? Why am I frustrated or angry? What seems like a silly point here. We're in a country where there's multiple faiths. I agree with that. But just because we're a country of multiple faiths doesn't mean we have to acknowledge, we don't have to list every name for God that every single faith has. I mean, the Satanists have faith. Are you supportive of Satanists? Do you believe that they should have a monument on our Supreme Court buildings? Yes or no? And if no, that means you're excluding some faiths from the public square or dialogue, which I'm okay with. You have to decide whether you're okay with it or not. And this country, when you look at the founders, and more than any other document that was quoted in the founders when they wrote back and forth to each other as they were discussing the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, you know what won more than John Locke, more than Montesquieu? You know who they're quoting more than anything else? the Bible. They were quoting the Bible. They talked about Jesus Christ. They talked about God. So we have a Judeo-Christian heritage in this nation. And it's our Judeo-Christian heritage which has given the country the freedom, the ability to have religious freedom, to say, hey, if you're of another faith, come to our country. Come worship. Be here. Be the person of faith that you want to be. But recognize that our foundation comes from God. Our rights come from God. And folks, we take that for granted here. We think, well, everybody has this in our world today. They don't. There are some countries on this planet that if you go there and you try to profess the Christian faith, you're going to be persecuted. Okay? Go to Saudi Arabia. Try to profess the Christian faith and live that out. Go to China. Invite people to church. Preach on the public square as a Christian. Folks, you're going to end up in jail. Or worse yet, you can be killed for your faith, for living your faith. This is not around the world that we have the religious freedom that we enjoy here in this country. And that's because our foundation, our foundational faith, is a Judeo-Christian heritage, which believes that every person has a right to seek after God. But that is because we have that foundation. So if we leave the foundation of God and our laws coming from God and coming from this belief that we're all made in the image and likeness of God, then laws themselves, they just simply become a societal contract that says, okay, you and I, we agree that this is right, and so let's make this law in our nation and society. Do you see anything that can go wrong when just simple, flawed human beings come together and say, yeah, this is what I believe human rights are, and this is what I believe human rights are not? All throughout human history, when you have laws and countries and governments just set up on societal contracts, you have groups of individuals who are denied their rights, and you have no recourse to action to change that country or to change that nation for the better. But our country started with a foundational belief that all people are created equal. And because of the language that was established in the Declaration of Independence, recognizing that our rights came from God, that enabled the abolitionists, for example, of the 18th and 19th century to fight against slavery and to eventually win a country that recognized that fundamental right. Unlike in many areas of the world where there is still slavery taking place. All right. That's why it matters that we talk about God. We talk about who we are. Because that's what we're forgetting in this nation with critical race theory coming down the throats of school boards and the 1619 Project, all that tries to rewrite America's history to make you hate America. And in hating America, be supportive of policies that will literally destroy this nation. That's what's taking place. And folks, again, we look at our society and it's fallen apart. And why is it falling apart? I think we've removed God from society. And when you do that, nefarious things happen. All right, last point here. Most important point. It's about Jesus. 10 o'clock, the show's gone far too long. I'm sorry. That's what happens when you give me a show, you give me a home, and I just get to preach. All right. Why is this so important? Again, when it comes to our country and all the different faiths, and we support every individual of every faith that comes here, and we support their desire and ability from a religious liberty perspective to seek and to find the truth. You know, so whether you're Buddhist, whether you're a member of the Nation of Islam, whether you're a member of, the Islamic faith, whatever it may be, you have a right. You're a Sikh. You have a right, a beautiful gift to live out your faith in the public square, to bring your ideas from your faith to the public square, to talk about them and debate them and say, this is the way that we see the world. Praise the Lord. Let's do that. Let's allow people to do that. That's the gift and genius of this country. But we should allow Christians to do the same. And here's why. I think that we need the Christian voice and the Catholic voice in the public square today. Because unlike the founders of all these other major world religions today, you do have one founder who claims something completely unique among all the other religions. And if what he said is true, then we better pay attention to it. Look, Moses was a great prophet of God, but he never claimed to be God himself. Muhammad, who began Islam, claimed to be a prophet of God, but he never claimed to be God himself. The Buddha never claimed to be God. One man, though, came to earth and said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way to the Father. I am God Almighty. That was Jesus Christ. So as C.S. Lewis said, quote, I am trying here to prevent anyone saying the real foolish thing that people often say about him, namely Jesus. I'm ready to accept Jesus as a great moral teacher, but I don't accept his claim to be God. That is one thing we must not say. A man who is merely a man and said the sort of things that Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with the man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool, you can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about his being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to. My friends, if Jesus Christ is truly God, if Jesus Christ is truly God, then what type of government is he calling us to have? And is the government that we have now a government whose leader can't even mention God? Do you think that's the desire of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? We'll see you next week on The Catholic Citizen. Thanks so much for joining us. Let me just, before I go, just say a few more things I just want to get out. Some great events that are coming up, and then I'll close the show. First and foremost, on May 21st, let me get out of the way here. There we go. Bishop Thomas is going to be with Jason Everett for Why Be Catholic. You can get tickets at awakencatholic.org. It's going to be a tremendous, fantastic event. Then the next day, Jason Everett is actually speaking at Sex, Love, and Porn. Super excited for this at St. Aloysius Parish. Again, tickets at awakencatholic.org. And then lastly, don't forget that on May 27th, Kristen Hawkins from Students for Life is going to be right here in Toledo talking about how she's going to help me build up the kingdom of God here in Northwest Ohio. I hope you'll be able to join each one of those events. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, terrific, wonderful. And folks, I can't thank you again so much for joining me on today's show. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate you guys joining on and listening to the show. We'll see you next week on The Catholic Citizen as we continue the good fight of faith.